Michael Eselun serves as the chaplain for the Simsman UCLA Center for Integrative Oncology. Two-time TEDx speaker, Michael speaks extensively to healthcare professionals, patient populations, and faith communities across the country. Long serving as adjunct faculty at the Wiesenthal Center Museum of Tolerance, he's also worked as an activist educator, addressing anti-LGBTQ bias in the larger community for well over 30 years. In 2019, Michael was inducted into the UCLA Semel Institute Eudaimonian Society in recognition of having lived a meaning-driven life. He has 4 volumes of CDs available for purchase. Contact Michael through his website, www.michaelelysium.com. Michael.
Good morning. And it's Eselun, but it's easy to mispronounce. Thank you so much for welcoming me again. I imagine, I can't see you all, but 1 or 2 of you must be old enough to remember suitcases that did not have wheels on them. You'd have to haul around this impossibly heavy luggage through an airport, a train station. You get to a hotel, you got to find a bellman right away because, hey, this thing is heavy. Why do you suppose it took a millennium or so to figure out if you put a few casters on that Samsonite, it'd be a little easier to manage? Still, just as heavy, but easier to manage. What about baggage like our grief, our sorrow, our despair, our disappointment, our regret? Do you suppose there's wheels for that particular suitcase? Still just as heavy, but perhaps easier to manage, at least until the time comes, if it ever does, to empty that suitcase and put it away. Leave it behind. My husband, Scott, of 47 years, has been living with Parkinson's disease for the last 9. I'm not going to lie, it has not been easy. Grueling, in fact, to watch him disappear day after day. And it's guaranteed to get worse. A dear friend recently asked, Michael, what do you do to dispel the sadness? That's the thing. The sadness doesn't get dispelled, ever. It gets held. You figure out how to carry it, how to move with it, find wheels for it. So what might those metaphorical wheels be? What might they look like? I used this very image not long ago in one of the spiritual reflection groups that I lead for cancer patients. What are your particular wheels? How do you navigate? How do you endure the unendurable? Not surprisingly, many were at the ready with very concrete answers. Oh, I work in the garden. I write poetry. I listen to music. I snuggle with my dog or cat. I find a friend who will listen to me, who will not cheerlead me, not give me a pep talk, and not give me any advice. It's not always so easy to find. One woman really glommed on to that image of the suitcase, but more particularly what was inside the suitcase, her baggage, if you will. Said, Michael, first I think I'd have to open that suitcase and figure out what was really mine and what was handed down to me, what was given to me, assumed of me. Maybe we need to lighten the load first before we schlep that suitcase around an airport or try to lift it into the overhead compartment. But as with all things, all luggage, all wheels are not of the same quality. Some suitcases are so poorly made, you use them once or twice and it's a goner. One of those defective metaphorical wheels, spiritually speaking, I find, is certainty. Taking comfort in the idea that I know something here. I know why I got this cancer. I know what it means, or I know I'm going to beat it. Adele was one such person in her early 30s, cured of Hodgkin's lymphoma, given the all clear, go live your life, be well. Adele didn't have to wrestle with all those pesky questions like, why me? Why did this happen to me? What's the meaning here? She knew why. And what's more, it was within her power to control it. I know why I got cancer, Michael, because my life was too stressful. I'm a working single mom. I was burning the candle at both ends. I couldn't sustain it. That's why I got cancer. But the comfort of that particular knife cuts both ways, because now her life is just as stressful as it was before, if not more so. And she's convinced that the cancer is going to come back, causing her so much distress. What if it was a faulty premise? What if it just happened? What if it really wasn't about stress at all? Do you suppose it's possible to find a new kind of wheel that could help her roll into a different relationship with uncertainty? Maybe even come to peace with it a little bit. These are uncertain times, to be sure, and overwhelming in so many dimensions, on a global scale, on a national scale, and certainly within the dimensions of our own individual lives. And there's no certainty to be found anywhere. For me, simply absorbing the outcome of the presidential election, devastating, confounding as it has been for so many, and the ramifications keep unfolding day after day. No certainty to be found anywhere. And it reminds me many years ago of having my car broken into. I think I was in the middle of a move and my car was packed with stuff and everything had been taken out of it. And weeks after filling out the insurance report and the police report, I realized, shit, my favorite jacket was in the car. And then a whole other layer of loss needs to be digested. And what's to be done about any of it? What can we do about the loss of our democracy, about global warming, about Gaza, about Ukraine, about LGBTQ rights, about reproductive freedom, about immigration, all of it? Are there wheels enough for all of that baggage? For myself, I find, if there's any reprieve or relief possible at all, it comes when I turn my attention from the big picture to the small picture, sometimes the very small, sometimes the teeniest gestures, kindness, seeing a full moon rise over the hills, the very smallest things. Maybe that's my particular brand of wheel. Maybe that's all life was ever really about. But I will tell you, the older I get, the more I've come to have faith in the idea that even the big things change, still, by only one conversation at a time. 2:30 in the morning, November 5th last year, I rolled over in bed, looked at my phone, and I saw that he had won. The ground fell out from under my feet. I was in free fall. I could not accept it. I still can't, in a way. Of course, there was no getting back to sleep. I tossed, I turned, and then I remembered, shit, I've got a speaking engagement this morning at 9 o'clock at the museum speaking about homophobia. What was I thinking in accepting that date? I tossed and turned until it came time to get up and showered and dressed and drove over to the museum, thinking aloud as I'm going to the museum, how am I going to frame this conversation today? How am I going to introduce it in a way? Why should anybody care about something like this on a day such as this? Got to the museum, parked, went upstairs to the conference center, and I dove in. Good morning. My name is Michael Eselun. This is certainly a potent morning, isn't it? I could hear my voice start to crack. I'm remembering another potent morning when I was likewise here at the museum. It was September 11th, 2001. Just a couple hours after the Twin Towers came down, I was speaking to an audience of K through 12 educators who were from Northern California, who were now stranded with the airspace closed indefinitely. It was a surreal morning. But the thing is, we were all in the same reality that morning. But this morning, in some ways, as surreal, we're not in the same reality. Some of us are devastated And some of us maybe in this room are celebrating. So I suppose my role this morning, in a way, is to build a bridge between those realities, whether I like it or not, whether I even want to or not, or whether I think I can or not. So that is a larger umbrella under which I invite you into conversation to look at how we as a culture are still so committed to marginalizing those who are not part of the dominant culture. And we're going to look through the narrower lens at the experience of queer folks. Well, somehow I got through the engagement a little wobbly. There were tears shed, there were hugs afterward. Absolutely worn out, I left the conference center, I was making my way through the lobby, and a man approached me. He had a very heavy accent. "Michael, excuse me, may I have a word?" I did not recognize him from the engagement that morning. He told me he had seen me a year ago at the museum, and he wanted to tell me that recently his daughter had come out to him and his wife, and it has not gone well. It's just not okay in our religion or our culture. My wife is really having a hard time with it. His eyes filled with tears as he confessed to me. And I'm so embarrassed to say, Michael, there have been moments when a part of me wondered if it would be better if she were dead. But I remembered what you said. And you gave me a framework to remember that I love my daughter. And that's what matters. So I want to thank you. I was crying. He was crying. I asked if I could give him a hug. And when I held him, I felt the ground beneath my feet again for the first time since 2:30 that morning. Okay, this is what it's about. One conversation at a time, leaving space for love. For me, I think those kinds of connections, those kinds of conversations are my wheels. A year or so ago, I had an intake to do with a new patient, Francine. Francine was in her 50s. She had been living with a very rough head and neck cancer and has a very poor prognosis. The intake was to be done on Zoom, and Francine was about 5 or 10 minutes late to the session. She apologized profusely. "Michael, I'm so sorry, I lost track of time. My daughter and I were driving around town looking for jacaranda trees in bloom." With some patients, when I'm doing an intake, often I will ask a very open-ended question like, "So tell me what's going on?" How a patient chooses to answer that question often reveals a great deal about where they are right now. But I know when a patient also starts with, "Well, in 1962, I know I'm in for a long sit." Some patients really need to tell their story, and I will seldom interrupt them. They need to tell it again. They need to hear it again. They need to digest it again. They need to translate and interpret it again from the standpoint of where they find themselves now. Francine was one such person. She launched and barely came up for air. I heard story after story of disappointment and setback and challenge. When I sensed she was winding down, she said, "So you see, Michael, my life has been one disappointment after another, and I don't think I ever really lived up to my potential. I don't have much time left, and I want to find some meaning in what time is left. How can I do that?" Well, we've got about 5 minutes left to our session. I said, "Francine, I don't mean to sound flip, but I think your answer might be in your opening sentence. I was out with my daughter looking for jacaranda trees in bloom." It doesn't get much smaller. And yet you took the time, spent the energy, had the intention to go looking for an experience of joy. Maybe catch some ephemeral beauty, maybe even some magic, and to share it with your daughter. All the more beautiful because you're sharing it with your daughter, and all the more beautiful because those blossoms do not last long. Just like life. Sometimes we just need to find oxygen in very small places. A few years ago, I was walking beside Nina, who was taking care of her husband, who was living with a glioblastoma, a terrible brain tumor. We had many such conversations over that year of how to find sustenance in the very small things. Once she told me about the previous week's visit to the infusion clinic. As is often the case, there are many patients there, often on the same day with the same diagnosis, because that's when the specialist in that particular diagnosis is in clinic. So there were other brain tumor patients. She and her husband were situated in their recliners, and in walks another patient with his wife. They appear to be very well-heeled, beautifully dressed, beautiful sweaters, slacks, shoes. They get situated in the recliner opposite Nina and her husband. Soon enough, the man says he needs to use the toilet. His wife gets up and helps him to the toilet, and when he gets back from the bathroom, it's clear that he has pissed himself. The front of his beautiful slacks is soaked with urine. The indignity of that, the humiliation of that. So this is what it's come to. This is how the story turned out. And he's got to sit there now for hours on end in urine-soaked pants. Nina looked at them both and she said, my heart just broke for both of them. And then the man, with this childlike glee, looks out the window and says, look, hummingbird. It doesn't get much smaller. Jacaranda trees and hummingbirds. Maybe that's the place we can find enough oxygen to take the next steps that life demands of us while we roll our suitcases behind us. 25 years ago, when I was beginning my internship for chaplaincy, one of the women in my cohort had been studying under a rather fringy kind of rabbi who posited this notion that our whole life's purpose and meaning might be fulfilled in one 5-minute conversation with a stranger. At first, I want to dismiss the idea because it's so demoralizing. Oh, come on, my life has to be more important than that. What if it's not? What if there's truth in that? I've kind of hung on to it for all these decades. What if it's true? What if it's just about that one conversation? A few years ago, one of my colleagues at the museum, Audrey, was flying back to the Midwest for a 30th high school reunion. Said, oh, Audrey, I love reunions. I'm so glad you're going. I can't wait to hear about it. When she got back, I asked her how it was, and she said, Michael, I'm so glad I went. It was just great. Thank you for the encouragement to go. But you'll never believe what happened. This woman came up to me. I didn't recognize her. She said, Audrey, I'm so glad you're here. You're the whole reason I came to the reunion, because I wanted to thank you. I will never forget what you said to me in 8th grade and what you did for me. It changed my life. Audrey doesn't have a clue who the woman was, let alone what she told her in 8th grade. One conversation at a time. 40 years ago, last summer, 1984, I took a break from my fledgling interior design business and I came out of retirement from my previous career as a professional dancer to go audition to be a performer in the opening ceremonies of the 1984 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. And what do you know? I was cast. What a time that was. And you knew going in, leave your ego at the door. This is so not about you. No one will see you. No one will notice you. And yet you have to do your best. You have to perform with excellence because you're a part of this overwhelming endeavor to welcome the world to Los Angeles. So after weeks of rehearsing on the football field at El Segundo High School, the 500-member Olympic Dance Corps moved downtown to the Coliseum as the big day approached. We would also be rehearsing the transportation plans for the day. We were all to drive out to Santa Anita Racetrack, park there, and from there a flotilla of LAUSD school buses would whisk us downtown and dump us off. We would do our bit and then they would scoop us up and take us back to Santa Anita. Well, this particular day, I think, was the day before the dress rehearsal. which would have an invited audience. Each of us could invite 4 friends, and there were other invited dignitaries. The Coliseum was half full. Well, this day, there was so much infighting and stress and tension. It was almost unbearable. Stress and fighting between the marching band director and the drill team director and the choreographer, well-known Broadway, TV, and film choreographer Ron Field, who had 8 assistant choreographers. All this fighting was scrambling to get field time to rehearse one segment or another one more time. We even had to cut 2 numbers we had worked for weeks on. We were to do a West Side Story medley, and a Singin' in the Rain medley had to be cut at the last minute, just no time to put it on the field. That rehearsal went on well into the evening and into the early morning hours. It was 1 or 2 in the morning. Everyone was exhausted. They finally said, enough, we've either got it or we don't. Let's go home. But guess what? The buses already had. We were stranded at the Coliseum at 2 o'clock in the morning. And this is long before anybody had a cell phone. What are we going to do? All this cooperative effort among the dance corps vanished. There were little explosions, little eruptions of anger. This is outrageous. I'm a professional. I've never been treated this way. The louder everybody got, the quieter I got and just observed. All that carrying on isn't going to get those buses back here any sooner. And then it hit me. This experience is so huge, this endeavor so big, nobody knows how to do it. There's nobody to call to figure it out. Just like life, just like my life, just like your life. Even though I've got people in my life, as I imagine you do too, who think they know how to do my life better than I do. When in fact, nobody does. Not even me. It hasn't been lived yet. Well, that dress rehearsal day was probably more thrilling than the big day itself. The excitement was so intense. The audience was so thrilled to be the first to see what the world would see tomorrow. They wanted it to be so good. Well, the finale of the entertainment section, and I know this is hokey as hell, the marching band made an outline of the continental United States on the field, and the whole cast was contained within that map. And then we were all to sing while the band played, America the Beautiful, a song written by a lesbian. I just think you should know that. If you don't, Catherine Lee Bates, a 19th century woman in a Boston marriage with another woman, school teachers, has a summer school job in Colorado, takes a train across country, so moved by the beauty she puts pen to paper. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies. When we got to the part of the song, America, America, we were to all gesture with our right arm in this big sweeping gesture, turning and encompassing the whole Coliseum. The audience was out of their feet. They were just out of their minds, screaming, cheering. I couldn't breathe. It was a moment of perfect communion. And I was invisible, so small. And yet it remains one of the peak experiences of my life. Surrendering into a larger reality, something we all must do, like it or not, time and again, as we cross life's thresholds, going from childhood to adulthood to working life to marriage to parenthood to divorce to grandparenthood to retirement to illness to caregiving, until we all have to face that ultimate reality. Can we be a little tender with ourselves as we figure it out, with some compassion, with more maybe curiosity than fear, and maybe just leaving room for the possibility of magic, like there was on the field that day in the Coliseum, in the unlikeliest of places? Can we let go of our need for certainty? Release our urge to perhaps compare our luggage to somebody else's. That's my particular specialty. Look at them, they must be doing it right. I missed the boat. When in fact, nobody knows how to do your life. We're all going to be boarding the same plane sooner or later. Can we kind of breathe into that and relax? But remember, when putting your suitcase into the overhead compartment, wheels first. So be it. Thank you.